Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Now, as you might have heard yesterday, James Spader was cast as Ultron, and the reason I say might have heard is because the story really failed to catch on. It was James Spader and Ultron were only trending momentarily here in the United States, and some of you pointed out that it was trending in Canada, James Spader at least, for a little bit, but still, there was nowhere near the reaction to the news that there was to the Ben Affleck as Batman casting, which leads me to say that in the kind of the DC Marvel movie war for 2015, while round one at Comic-Con was a draw, I think they both got equal attention for their big announcements, Batman and Superman being in the same film and Ultron being the villain for Avengers 2. I'd say for this round two fight with casting, Warner Brothers is the winner, and that just really is amazing to behold and makes you wonder if maybe there is a method to Warner Brothers' madness of casting Ben Affleck, because he certainly got a lot of attention for the film, he got a lot of interest for it, and 2015 is so far away that maybe after this initial gut, instinctual reaction of disgust from a lot of fans, they might, they have enough time maybe to really get acclimated to the idea, and if Warner Brothers sets it up right, if Ben Affleck takes it really seriously, Warner Brothers could pull this off, which would just be an amazing feat. Of course, the story and the directing have to be good, and I have some concerns about that after Man of Steel, but that's a whole different conversation. But what we're talking about here is casting. Now, there are a couple of reasons that the James Spader story might not have really stuck. One is that it's a voiceover, so you're not going to be really seeing him in the movie, so maybe that's why it's not as exciting. Also, perhaps people just feel Marvel is going to do a great job no matter what, so there's no reason to discuss it. Well, there was great concern that maybe the DC franchise was, heading off the rails. So, it was like an emergency to discuss. And the third reason, though, which I think is true, is that Ben Affleck is, love him or hate him, however you might feel about his acting versus his directing, he's a very cinematic actor. He is a movie star, whereas James Spader is a television star, and not a cable television star. This is a huge distinction. A lot of you have, because I said that I felt that James Spader as a television actor was a little bit of a liability to Avengers 2, because he doesn't have, the cachet of an actor working in films, and as someone you can see on network television, as someone that a lot of people associate with a light comedic show like Boston Legal. I think very few, the huge group of the main audience for Avengers 2 isn't familiar with James Spader's earlier work, the work that I think endears him to cinephiles. And this is actually something the Hollywood Reporter covered as well, this potential pitfall for the Avengers 2 by casting James Spader. But anyway, so a number of you said, Grace, we don't agree with this. We feel that James Spader, an actor is an actor, he's a talented actor, and the barriers between television and film are being broken down, so how can you say that a TV actor is going to be a liability for a film? And I would stress to you that there are huge different levels of television actors. There's a network television actor, which, that's the hardest area to transition from. It's very hard to go from being on network television to being in films. That's not to say you can have a small supporting role, which, when someone mentioned Chris Pratt as an example. Chris Pratt only has tiny little roles, so I think that he can be maybe an added incentive to go and see the film. You're like, oh, I enjoy him on Parks and Rec, I'll go see him. But he's yet to prove that he can carry a movie, certainly as a big heavy like James Spader has been cast. He is the leading Guardians of the Galaxy, but I feel that he is a huge, just as I felt about James Spader, I feel that casting a television star like Chris Pratt, who is yet to prove that he has any kind of box office draw, and James Spader, by the way, never had box office draw his entire career. It's one of the reasons he had to go to television. So Chris Pratt, I think, is going to be an obstacle for Guardians of the Galaxy, and it could end up hurting the film. Someone also mentioned Kerry Washington, because she's in Django Unchained. She had a very small part in Django Unchained, and also Meet the Peoples was a film that she co-starred in, along with another television star, Craig Robinson from The Office, and that really did not do well at the box office. Because the thing is that you have to understand that while you in particular might be willing to give these actors a chance, there's a huge swath of moviegoers, or potential moviegoers, I might say, that will see a television actor in a movie and go, well, you know what? I can see him for free on television, so why should I pay to see him? Or her. I will wait until it's cheaper on demand or television, plays on television, because that's where I like to see that actor. You have occasional, where someone like Steve Carell or Tim Allen plays in to their television persona, such as with the Santa Claus, or when Steve Carell was going and playing, the spy movie that he was in. Get Smart. And that did well because they were playing off the personas that they did so well on television. And it was they were going into like, one was a holiday movie and one was a franchise film. But you'll notice that neither one of them has been able to continue that success because there wasn't really the actor that was the success. It was the persona from the television show. And some people also mentioned, Will Smith, Michael J. Fox. Those people transitioned from film into television. I mean, out of television into film. They were at the peak of their television popularity. They jumped into genre films. I guess you could say like James Spader is doing, but they jumped into those films and they never looked back. They left television. They're not people who did them simultaneously. James Spader, he had, as I said, he started in movies and had to go to television to find his audience. So, he's not someone at the height of his popularity who's building on that and trying to take it to the next level. Also, then there's cable television actors. Cable television actors, very well respected. I think that if anyone can transition over to film, it's them. However, you have to recognize that they are having a huge problem doing that. Jon Hamm, unable to get a movie role. He has a $1 Million Arm coming up, a Disney flick, but he could not get picked for major roles. He was a supporting role in The Town and stuff like in films like that. But you would think Don Draper, actually not very successful in the ratings, but very critically acclaimed, cannot get a big starring role in a movie. Bryan Cranston. I am on the Bryan Cranston should be Lex Luthor train, but let's admit that Bryan Cranston has had very little luck, even with Breaking Bad, getting into movies. He was in Total Recall, the reboot. And I also have to point out that if someone said, Malcolm in the Middle and Breaking Bad, if Bryan Cranston had never made Breaking Bad, despite the fact of his ability to play Lex Luthor, he never would have been cast as Lex Luthor off of Malcolm in the Middle because it's a network sitcom. It just never would have happened. He doesn't have the cachet of the cable show. Also, people mentioned Sean Bean and Rose Byrne and Lita Headey, and I would point out to you that none of these people can carry a movie, not one. And when they are in films, they're in small supporting roles, again, just to kind of be an extra cherry on top, or not even the cherry, maybe the sprinkles or the nuts on the sundae, just not a huge incentive, but just maybe if they need to push the moviegoer over the edge to buy the ticket, they'll say, don't you enjoy this person in this show? Look at even Peter Dinklage. He is by far and away the most popular character on Game of Thrones. Well, I don't know, I guess that could be debatable, but he's certainly up there. And all he can do is to get to play as Bolivar Trask in Days of Future Past in a very crowded cast. You would think that he could do, considering his star power, you think he could do better than that. So I'm imploring you to, think about the realistic aspects of a situation. Don't think about what ideally you want to happen, how you would ideally like actors to be treated. You really need to think about the reality of the situation, and because if you were giving advice to these actors, you wouldn't be helping them. Television, people started on soap operas, but they left. So, and also, evidence point, right away, not a big story. No one's excited about James Spader as Ultron, and I think that's a fascinating turn of events. And you have to wonder what, just less than 24 hours later, or about 24 hours later, what they're thinking over at Marvel Studios about this casting decision. I'm sure they were hoping it would dominate the entire weekend, and it's already basically, it's a non-starter as a story. All right, well, speaking of comic book movies, Legendary, as we all know, has left Warner Brothers and gone over to Universal. Well, Universal is really petitioning Legendary to take over their Dracula Year Zero project, which is really an origin story for Dracula. And I think that makes sense considering how well Legendary did with their DC movies, and they have such a good, strong understanding of the fanboy audience that, and they need that kind of legitimacy for this kind of project so it doesn't turn into something, cheesy, as vampire movies can do. And also, you have a little bit of a stigma against them because of, the whole Twilight franchise and things like that. So they really need to get that male fan base to attend. However, the most interesting thing I find about Dracula Year Zero is that Luke Evans has been cast as Dracula. Now, Luke Evans is a British actor. His star is on the rise. He was the villain in Fast 6. He plays I forget the character's name right now at the top of my head, but he plays an important role in The Hobbit. The second Hobbit film, The Desolation of Smaug, coming out at the holidays. But the thing about him is that he's an openly gay actor. He doesn't wear it on his sleeve, but he does not hide the fact that he's gay. And this is going to be a fascinating thing to see if he can continue with this momentum, with that being the case. I'm not quite sure if he's backtracked on it, because on his Wikipedia page, someone mentioned that he said a female PR executive said that she was dating him. Maybe he's found that it has been a little bit difficult with being openly gay, but I would hope not. I mean, if he took the time to say, I'm an openly gay actor, and that shouldn't affect the roles that I can play, because straight actors play gay characters all the time. I would be ashamed if he backtracked on it. But the reason it's an interesting thing to watch is because it's been a problem for gay actors in the past. Rupert Everett famously talked about the fact that he came out and it really hurt his career. It's for some reason audiences have trouble seeing a gay actor in a straight role. So if Luke Evans can, as an openly gay actor, pull off the lead role in a genre film like Dracula, that would just be a huge step forward for the industry and for actors in general. It would be a big stepping stone. And as I mentioned, Roland Emmerich is putting an openly gay character in Independence Day 2, who that's not going to be the main reason his character is there. It's not going to be comic relief. He's just going to be a hero, a heroic character, part of the cast who just happens to be gay. And these are all very interesting strides that are being made. And as I pointed out when that news was broken about Independence Day 2, this is something that's been going on in comic books for quite some time. So I guess it makes sense that as comic book movies become more popular, that the same movement would transition to film. But the film audience is a lot bigger. It is a lot more it encompasses a lot more people, and it'll be interesting. And hope there's tolerance here in the United States, a great deal of tolerance. So it will be interesting to see if that tolerance, from marriage, which is the main area it's being discussed, moves over into film and entertainment. Okay, so that's the first two stories of the day. The third story, as some of you pointed out, is that Batman Superman, aka Man of Steel 2, is going to be shooting in Detroit. And I thought this was really funny because actually my dad's family is from near Detroit, and my mother's family is from Pittsburgh, where they shot The Dark Knight Rises. And we were actually there. I was visiting my grandmother while they were shooting, and it was really funny to drive around at night and see all the blocked off streets. We were actually in the rain, and I'll never forget that we turned a corner, and in honor of the movie being shot there's like this big T-Rex outside of a store, and someone would put a Batman cape and cowl on it, which I thought was really hilarious to see that. And it was so I have like fondness about that aspects of it. But however, I would say that when I saw The Dark Knight Rises, as much as I love Pittsburgh, I felt that it didn't stand in for Gotham quite as well as Chicago had in The Dark Knight. So I questioned the decision to move around within a franchise from city to city. I think once you pick your stand-in city, you should stay with it. But anyway, regardless, the reason I also bring this up is because the mayor of Los Angeles has declared a state of emergency because they're losing, I don't really know if that's an appropriate use of state of emergency, but he feels it's that important that the state is losing so much business to other states and other countries based on incentives. And basically there's huge tax write-offs. They give a little bit of funding, so basically the state can lure a production locally, which provides, not only tourist incentives, but also creates a ton of jobs, and it's just very important for the state and the city. So I wonder what you guys think. Do you think Detroit can stand in for either Metropolis or Gotham or wherever they're going to go? It's interesting they're just going to shoot in one city. Can they dress it up to go both ways? Will it all take place in Metropolis, and Batman will just come to visit? And if you live in Detroit, are you excited? Are you excited that the film will be shooting there? Because remember, I believe Avengers 2 shot in Cleveland. So a superhero movie could be very close to you very soon. So those are the three stories for the day. Actually, I want to address kind of two questions today. One's not really a question. The cool complexity the other day, I was talking about Bradley Cooper voicing Rocket Raccoon, and the cool complexity said it should be H. John Benjamin. H. John Benjamin. And if you're not familiar with him, he does the voice of Archer. He's done other voices prior to that, but that's how I was introduced to him. And this guy is so good at his voiceover work that I think whatever character you first meet him as, that's who he will always be to you. I can't imagine the show Archer without him. Archer, I feel, is a character probably pretty close to Rocket Raccoon from what I've heard. I don't know if H. John Benjamin can do a British accent, but I think he would be a fantastic choice. I feel not enough people are familiar with Archer that they could use him. And some of you might be going, Grace, isn't he a television actor? Don't you think the same problems apply? And I would say, to some degree, I think they do. Again, taking someone from television and moving them over, it's always a risk. But I do think that H. John Benjamin's work is so strong, and he's so good at voice acting that he would, I think, potentially be able to pull off that character. I still feel it should have been Vin Diesel. Vin Diesel has recently announced that his reps are working at some kind of voiceover deal with Marvel. He's not sure if it'll work out. And some people say it's Groot, but Groot hardly speaks at all. And I think Vin Diesel as a raccoon is hilarious, and I think he would just be a fantastic choice for the role. So, but we'll see. All right, so the question now is from Pat B. And Pat B. said, what advice would you give to people who want to be screenwriters and directors? Now that's an extremely complex discussion, and there are many different areas where you can get advice if you want to pursue those avenues. But I think the biggest one that I'm going to give kind of ties into the first story today, talking about TV actors. But I would say the most important thing you should do is to remember to be realistic when setting your goals and be realistic when evaluating your progress towards meeting those goals. I would almost say, as a metaphor, it's like when in a horror movie or a fantasy movie when someone dives into the abyss and they tie a rope around themselves and they anchor it to kind of make sure that they can find their way back. I would say that you need to kind of do that to yourself, because it's very difficult, and especially with an artistic endeavor, to not get lost in the artistry of it all. The business side should be your guide, because art is a matter of opinion, but business deals in cold hard facts, and even film festivals are a business because they're very political. So you really have to just find a writer or director that came up, whose path you admire, and really try and see how they did it. And I would also point out to you, be realistic about what genres you can start in. It's similar to how people want to be comic book writers and they say they want to write for Marvel and DC. And it's like nobody starts out writing for Marvel and DC. I mean, unless you come from another field of writing where you're very successful. The only people I've seen do that are, like, for instance, a screenwriter's been able to jump right in, and also novelists. But by the way, I would also like to point out that most times when someone does that, they don't do well because it's a different medium, and there's a learning curve, and it just doesn't transition. So, don't think that you're going to be making a big comic book movie right away, and make something that doesn't necessarily appeal to, your friends and fans, but that's going to appeal to the person who needs to hire you for that next movie, that's going to appeal to the board at the film festival, that's going to make agents want to pass your video around. That's what you really need to think about. And so that, I think, is the best short answer that I can give you. Be realistic, do your homework, and also find someone, if you feel you can't be totally realistic yourself, find someone who's a friend or a family member who will always be honest with you, even if it's not what you want to hear. I have that with my mom. My mom does that for me, and I can't tell you how important it is. I feel everyone in every aspect of life should have someone that they know that they can trust to always tell them the truth, not what they think they want to hear, what would be nice to hear, just what is honest. And so that's today's morning movie news. Thank you for tuning in. I hope that you have a wonderful Labor Day weekend if you're here in the United States. And Beyond the Trailer will have programming popping up a little bit actually through the weekend and the rest of the day. So I hope you enjoy it. Bye.